You're listening to the FaceTime with Scientists podcast, where we go into the lab or into the field to learn from scientists about their lives, their work, their struggles, and their joy. Let's go. Hi, everyone. Today I'm with Manuela Guzman, a science artist and illustrator who recently got her graduate degree. And I found out about you through you have an amazing thesis that I want us to chat about where you illustrated it. And it's all about illustrating insects and engaging people with science through emotions. So, can you tell us a little bit about where you are today and what we're seeing in front of us? You're going to show us some paintings or some drawings today?
Yes, thank you so much for having me in your podcast. So yeah, I've been like exploring maybe ways to engage with science through illustration. Before I was working a lot with like literacy promotion and like working with workshops and like for kids. And I just started being so curious on like how can we use illustration in a way that can invite knowledge or more so like invite curiosity towards our surroundings. And to me, emotions have been a really important way to do this. So I feel like just reflecting on our experiences is a good way to engage with the world and have more questions about the world. So I started having um, yeah, just a lot of questions on how science manages this in science communication, and I realized there was actually a lack of maybe this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so yeah, I feel like science sometimes, although it's really cool and it's really interesting, and I feel like I've been discovering that more and more throughout this process. I feel like it's usually managed more like isolated facts or like something to memorize rather than something to engage with and connect to. So yeah, I've been just exploring this. I focused on insects, so all my drawings are about insects.
That's amazing.
Thank you. And yeah, so basically my thesis is this project that imitates an insect, like a scientific insect collection, but each insect is actually one story about an insect and like kind
Oh,
of like an experience I had with this insect or like a letter I wrote to each insect. Um because I started being really interested in collecting insects, but also there's like so much history on like collection and so much debate on like how ethical is collecting specimens, and I was really interested in maybe exploring other ways to do this. Yeah, that's basically how I can describe it. So
that's super
I'm
cool.
gonna show a couple of images that I've been doing. So this is one of the first images I did. It's like, I don't know, I guess a kind of self portrait
Right.
of me like saying hi, or I don't know if shaking hands. Like I thought about it and I think
That's so
it's
cute.
like we're shaking hands with a beetle. And I was really, I don't know, like trying to really focus on the textures. I really enjoy like doing a lot of having movement in my drawings, so maybe
Yeah,
here
I
you can
love
see the
that.
texture a little bit.
Yeah, it totally looks like you're shaking hands with the little beetle. It's beautiful. I love the colors and like the fungus like has that mushrooms has a kind of that like flesh colored look to it.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been like trying to, I don't know, find ways to draw environments because I feel like drawing plants is they're so intricate and like it takes a while to draw them. So I'm like trying to find ways to do this. Um, okay, so this was one of the first comics I did. So this was the letter I did for the honeybee. And for example, something I do with this specific comic, like each insect I feel like teaches me something. Um, so I was like thinking about communication and the bees, because I learned that they communicate with this eight figure shape when there's a source of pollen.
Interesting.
And
Is that like part of their little like waggle dance or whatever?
yeah,
Yeah, it's something to do with like they're telling other bees like what direction the pollen is in.
yeah, exactly. So when I learned this, I collaborated with the Bonoan Pollinator Lab at Providence College. And I was coming to their field trips and like just going to the lab like every once in a while. I actually did with them something I wanted to show you because um, I really like what came out of it. But it's like an identification pamphlet of bumblebees on
Oh,
southern New England. So these are like some data about pollination. And I think this is connected to my work in the sense that like I am trying to maybe talk about bumblebees not just in a way like let's identify them, but also like what can you plan to help them? Like why are they important? What is their role? So how can we engage with them? And then there's like the different types of bumblebees.
that is
And
adorable.
they're so funny looking.
It's so cute, and I love that very, like, active yeah, like, not just like, "Oh, bumblebee," but yeah, what's the actionable for the person who might be seeing them in their yard.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know, I was also talking a lot with Rachel Bonoan, Rachel Bonoan. She is the professor at the lab. And we were actually thinking, like, how can we maybe represent insects in a way that is like I don't know, my style I think tends to be a little more cartoonish, but we were like, how can we make them like fun looking and but still realistic, like still something accurate to like their morphology
Right.
and yeah, like anatomically correct. Um so yeah, I like exploring those possibilities because I don't know. Although I respect a lot like scientific illustration that is like really realistic and accurate. I think that there's so much we can still do to play around with things so they're more yeah, like so they get your attention and you can be a little more curious about what you see around you in real life.
Yeah. Okay, so this is very interesting because, like, I've done some science communication research on and explored kind of this idea that, like, hyper realistic imagery sometimes can, like, overwhelm people. Like, there's this sense of I guess it depends, like, on the area, but, like, let's say in, like, cancer, like, you're
Mhm.
learning about something a disease, like, something hyper realistic that looks, like, overly, you know, evil or overly complex, like, it's almost, like, too much to, like, engage with. Just like you said, like, maybe, you
Mm.
know, a ton of, like, hyper detail of the anatomy. When you simplify down, it lets people focus on exactly, like, specifically what you're kind of pointing to or what you want them to see. I don't know, do you think about do you think that that's true as well?
I think so. I was for the thesis book, I was actually doing research on this and it was like people talking about I read a lot of texts that were basically explaining how scientific illustration is so important for like science communication because sometimes what we need is like something really direct that explains to us what is going on in a biological process or something like that that yeah, maybe looking at something too realistic, it doesn't go through
Right.
as much. And I feel like there's also cartoon and like comic studies that are related to how comics are or cartoons are actually really effective to engage with the public and even really create the sense of like I don't know, identification. Like it's more easy to you to identify with a drawing that it's maybe simple and probably you could make
Right.
um
Right.
than with like maybe something that looks too complex or that maybe looks too similar to what you would have like what you would have in front of you in real life. I don't know. It's like a different kind of association you make and in some way at least in my experience, I find more effective the kind of visual, I don't know, supports that tend to be more like directed to narrative or to like
Right.
visual explorations that are not necessarily realistic or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I am so passionate about this. I think it's so interesting. This is basically the comic I made about the bees and I was talking about I don't know how the bees communicate with their bodies And I was kind of explaining this experience because I was thinking like, oh, it must be really weird to communicate with your body like that. But then I was like, the body always is saying stuff like,
True.
but we never really think that. Like, I feel like there's like even like sweating or like there's a lot of chemical reactions that we have all the time that communicate things. And I feel like we sometimes don't see that as communication, like us as just regular people that are not studying that necessarily. So I was just trying to see like how I can relate to bees in some way, like how our bodies are talking. And I actually talk here this is like it's imaginary, but actually I added the text digitally. That's why it's not
Gotcha,
here.
gotcha, yeah.
I am talking about how a bee stung my glove and she died. And I was kind of saying sorry for not understanding her signals or the way she was communicating because for her to feel um threatened and to like go to like sting someone, like there's something going on that maybe I wasn't seeing because there was so much going on. But so it was like kind of this apology letter to the bee.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute.
This is some illustrations I did for a letter I did for a moth that is actually from um Colombia. That's where I'm come from. So I am from Colombia. I come from Bogotá, that is the capital. And in my city, there's always this like orange butterfly or like moth. It's a moth, I learned. It's a moth. But she's all over and no one I never learned their name or like scientific name or like common name. I never could find the common name, but um it's all over the place. And when I was doing research about her, in my head it's her, but about them, I learned that they are actually just in, I think it's Colombia and Bolivia, but that's it. Like they're
Wow.
actually not in other places. And I was like, wow, like it's something so unique and I didn't even know. And no one notices them because they're just there.
That's so crazy.
Um,
Yeah, they're common enough that you're just like, "Oh, yeah, it's always there," but for someone coming from the outside, they're like, "I've never seen this before," I'm sure.
yeah, that's so like exciting always. But yeah, this was like what I learned in this letter, it was like relating to like home and how I related to this space. And I kind of say that the same than the moth, we are both part of like the mountain and like the people and beings that live in the mountain because Bogota is among the mountains. So yeah, that was kind of what I was doing with that one.
I mean,
Um,
related to, like, growing up
yeah,
there, like, I mean, when did you first get interested in insects? Has that always been an interest of yours? So, like, when did you kinda start merging science and art yourself?
actually, it's interesting because I used to be freaked out by insects. I didn't like them at all growing up. And I think it was because they were like so scary. Like, so they're so different from us. And that's something I actually talk about in the thesis, like in my thesis book, because I don't know, I used to not be like into insects at all, but I feel like coming here because I came to the US to do my master's in illustration. Um so I feel like coming here and moving to another place, I ended up looking for familiar things everywhere. And there was this day where I found this bush with ladybugs.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just found this like familiar animal. So I stayed and looked at the bush for a little bit and then I started noticing ladybug larvae.
Oh.
But I didn't know they were larvae. I didn't know they were like younger ladybugs. And I was a little scared. Are so different. They look so different. And I was like, what is that?
Yeah, you're like, "What's that
And
little worm thing?"
yeah. And so I did a little research because I was so curious. And I realized it was like the same ladybug, just younger. And I was really surprised about how the same being can look so different in different stages of their lives. And I just started being more and more curious. And I think it's interesting because they're all around us, but they still have that factor of like being something unknown to us.
Yeah.
And that just draws my attention a lot. Yeah, I feel like I have a tendency or like an interest to maybe find for like or look for common points between me and my surroundings. In my undergrad, I actually did like this, I don't know, book as well that was like a diary where I was like talking about my experiences, but also my learning process of like learning how to read the stars in the sky. I guess I'm always really interested in like that, I don't know, parallel you can make between like intimate situations and nature and the stars or plants or insects. So I think it's always something that I've been interested in, but insects particularly I've been fascinated like recently.
That's super cool.
Thank you. But yeah, this is about the grasshopper. Um
I love all of the if you go back, like, I love the just, like yeah, I guess it's straw or grass or, like but the color of that, and they're, like,
yeah,
walking along. Oh.
they're like mini insects like
Oh, just,
dancing.
like, walk oh, dancing, gotcha.
Yeah, I
Then it kind of looks like they're on I mean, they're on, like a pathway or whatever. Like,
yeah.
I was just gonna ask in your own, like, art in visualizing these things, like, how do you bring in, like, analogies like that? Like, choosing how to show them. Like, why show the insects dancing in particular, right? Like, what brings the ideas out to create yeah, like, analogies or settings for them that I guess is very human in a way?
Yeah, I was I did a lot of research on this as well because studying illustration, I think it was mainly like trying to understand representations of insects and like why there was like specific representations of them. Um and I actually did like in one winter like period that we had, I did like research on representations of insects in like children's books. And
Ah,
I realized, or even like before that, like in, I think insects started being really related to fairies and magical creatures. And I think it is related to the fact that they are like this mysterious, unknown beings because they're so tiny.
right.
And it's hard to like figure them out, I feel. But I realized that there was actually a lot of old books of scientists, I think during this more romantic era, that were like describing nature and insect as fairies or as humans or giving them human traits. And I think that's super interesting because today in science, like I remember even like talking with scientists, usually there's this like thing where I'm like, "Oh, I don't want to like hurt him." And they're like, "Don't say him, say it." You know?
Oh,
And there's this like,
really?
yeah.
Interesting.
And I obviously get why is that because I feel like if we give human traits always to like animals or plants or insect, yeah, they're animals, but you know what I mean. I think that can imply a lot of maybe assumptions about them, and it's like maybe try to understand them as a different being. But I don't know. I feel like there's something really valuable in being able to find a parallel between us and like giving them a little bit of human traits sometimes, or giving ourselves sometimes some insect traits. I think
Yes.
it's important for us to feel like more connected to them, like realizing that yes, we're different and probably they perceive the world so different from us, but um we still have stuff in common that we can like relay on to yeah, like to build empathy with them, I think.
Right. I love that so much.
So yeah, I think this was a little I don't know, like reference to that research I did, and it's like so subtle.
I love it.
Thank you. But yeah, there was a lot of reading behind it. I'm actually with the bees in my thesis. I'm writing like the actual research and illustration I did, but I am talking a lot about how historically we've been, even yeah, from scientific illustration, we've been representing nature in a way that can contribute to ways of seeing that can again contribute to like maybe perception of nature like more related to like an object or
Mm,
something like that. So there's this text I was reading. I remember this text was talking exactly about like Maria Sibylla Marianne, that is this scientist and illustrator that like dedicated a lot of her work in depicting metamorphosis and insects. So they were talking about how she was kind of the first one to depict metamorphosis in scientific illustration and how that changed so much. Like, because before the plants or insects were depicted separately in a white background, and that kind of isolated them, and people didn't actually know caterpillars and butterflies were connected,
right.
and it was just like putting them together in an image with their host plant, which actually created a better understanding of the insects. And it's just like interesting to see how like subtle decisions you make when making an image can like actually create an impact on how people understand, yeah, like nature, like something in like outside, you know.
Right. No, no, you think about like, I mean, scientists needing to like document insects or things in the field before they had like readily available cameras, that they were
Mhm.
drawing those things. And I didn't think about the fact that like, yeah, if they were trying to describe a specimen, they would probably just draw the specimen on like a white background or something, just, not drawing the whole context, which then you go back to the museum or whatever, and then you're only looking at it kind of in isolation from that context, which
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's really interesting. It's like interesting to think how, sorry, you as like someone that is drawing to learn about something, you kind of need to like isolate it a little bit sometimes to like understand it. But if I don't know, we think about Europe, that was like all people were that's all they were receiving from the outside in like Latin America, let's say. And I guess that implies a specific type of understanding that maybe being there like would be a completely different experience.
Right.
So yeah, I am super passionate about that. I find like I don't know, history of science and like science communication really interesting. Um so yeah, this was the other one about the grasshopper. So it's basically I don't know, kind of this dynamic of like trying to get closer to a grasshopper, but they're always like jumping away. And it's like this like playful interaction. Um I was also like doing a lot of research on like myths or yeah, like stories that people used to tell about or that tell still about insects. And I learned that in Mexico actually like grasshoppers are seeing like a messenger or like I don't know, kind of they indicated like the land where the Aztecs, I think, would like live. Um, and that place is now a place that it's called like it is translated. It's I think like the mountain of the grasshopper. It's like something like that, but it's like really interesting. It's called Chapultepec. It's like a park now.
That's so cool. And I love that, yeah, you visualized it like kind of that for not I don't know what to call it. I'm not an artist. That perspective of like you're really close to the face or the hands are really big, like from the grasshopper's point of view, whatever. I love that.
Thank you. So this one was about the mantis, the praying mantis. Um, it looks almost like an animation, I think. Um,
It
I
does, yeah.
think I want to show you the book that came out of that, because all of these are like the drawings that I printed to like turn into like different format books.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love the like which I mean for people who are who don't know comics, that's one thing, right? That I think is so cool. I don't draw them, but I've worked on with artists to create comics of just like how
Yeah.
you can kind of like slow down time in a way, like in a really cool because you're having these sequential images of like showing just like slight movement of the eyes, right? And then it focuses people down on that particular moment. Um,
Yeah.
which is maybe a really cool thing for science is like kind of pausing for a second and really contemplating and like sitting with something.
Yeah, it's I find fascinating how comics and like even animation can do that. Like it can like stretch time in
Yes.
really weird ways. And there's actually this show that came out like not that recently, but it's like recent. And it's called Scavenger's Reign. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I haven't.
It's like basically about another planet. Like everything happens in another planet, and they just designed all of this ecosystem in that planet. But
That's so
they
cool.
like portray it so like in detail, and it's like really interesting how they do that. And I feel like they do a really, I don't know, good representation of an ecological view, but in another made up universe. It's like crazy, but I think they do that really well.
That's amazing. Well, I was gonna ask you, like, in a lot of these, you're describing some kind of period of these letters of working with a lab, or how did that come to be in terms of did you come up with this idea for your thesis and then you were like, well, I need to learn more about these bugs, and so I'm turning to the scientists. Like, when did that like turning to the scientific and scientists to inform you, like, how did that come about?
Yeah, well, Um, so in my experience, it happened like I saw these ladybugs. I did more research. I ended up researching about children's books and like how they represent insects. But I feel like then I was like curious about learning about the insects
Right.
themselves. In my program, there's this in the master's program, there is this semester where like the goal is kind of to collaborate with an entity that you're interested in. It can be an organization. It's all for like, I don't know, like a cause that you want to work in. It could be a social cause, it could be an environmental cause, it could be something related to that, or just like being more involved with the community as an artist and like trying to understand how to contribute to, yeah, like the society with your work. And because I was having this interest, I was like, okay, I guess I can like see where to go. I was looking here in Providence in Rhode Island. I was looking at the Audubon. I was looking at
Mm.
different like places that maybe I could collaborate with. But I ended up going with one of my friends to an event that they do each year called the BioBlitz.
Yes. Okay, it's so
And
funny. I'm actually talking, hopefully getting an ant researcher on the podcast, and they were just doing a BioBlitz. So she was
oh,
telling me, like,
I
yeah, and
is it Jane Waters?
yes,
Okay, cool.
yes.
Yeah, I love
Oh my
she's so
gosh,
cool.
that's amazing. Yeah, I wanted her to get on and show us some ants. So
It's oh my god. Yeah, I actually wanna because I ended up in the ant team in the BioBlitz, so I met Jane Waters.
that's amazing.
And I started going to the ant lab, like, last summer many times just to go and hang and learn. And they were so, like, I don't know, welcoming. My friend and I started going there, and yeah, Jane was so like welcoming and like open to all of our questions that obviously we were like so clueless about a lot of stuff because we don't have any science background. So it was really nice. And in the BioBlitz, we ended up like learning about ants, collecting ants, identifying ants, reading about them because they brought a lot of books about ants. And This is actually a drawing I made there
Oh,
because
that's super cool. Yeah, I think I've seen, right, like, this is kind of how they do collections, or at least I've seen some videos where they like, yeah, set up a white sheet with a light at night and then kind of, like, collecting from there, right?
yeah, and I've never seen this before, that BioBlitz, like, last year. I didn't know that's how they collected, moths,
Ah, that makes sense.
and yeah, it makes sense. I had
Yeah.
no idea, like,
Yeah.
and it was really interesting because I don't know, like, also you would think science is this really, like, isolated thing you do in a lab, but, like, the truth is that being there, I don't know, I just felt so like, I wanted to draw these, like, scene because to me it was so beautiful, like, just people around, like, it was just people meeting in a circle to, like, contemplate,
I love
like,
it. I mean, it
these
looks like
animals.
almost like a drive-in movie, right? Like you're looking at this projector, like it's very much like a like cool, like we're watching something and it's bugs like
It's
coming to
so
the light.
beautiful.
That's
But yeah, I was really, like, moved by that. I don't know, cause I don't know, like, I feel like sometimes there's, like, a lot of debates even, like, about I did one of the books about the spotted lanternfly, and I read a lot about it and, like, about the treatment of invasive species, and I do have, obviously, thoughts about the narratives that are used within that, but at the same time, this whole idea of, like, managing an introduced species, like, it implies also that, like, you care about your surroundings and you care about preservation, and, like, I feel like scientists do really care about what they're doing and about the beings they're studying, and I don't know, this moment to me was a little bit of seeing that, like, wow, people are really passionate about this, and this is, like, really beautiful. I don't know, it was really exciting.
that no, I love that so much. And I was gonna ask, like, when you do you share these images back with the scientists and like what are some of their receptions? Because I imagine they love seeing their science in this different way. I mean, I can imagine that they do, but
Well, so far, my experience has been really good.
yeah.
People get really excited, and I feel like I don't know, I think just being able to find a commonality with someone that is, like, being so curious and interested in what you are so curious and interested in, I think it's always exciting, and I don't know, I guess that's how I interpret their excitement when I go to them and show them, like, the ants that I draw or, like, the insects that I did or something like that. They tend to be excited and really open to it. I've never, like, had an experience of someone that is like, "No."
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, well, because I think it's also part of, like, their experience, like, there's some sort of connection you must feel with a being to just dedicate your time to study them. Like, there must be more than just, like, "Oh, let's learn, like, this really," like,
Oh, yeah.
um yeah, like, specific thing in this really specific way. So yeah, I've been really excited sharing this with them in general. So this is a comic I did, and I was thinking about the this is funny. I was thinking about winter, because after this past summer, learning about insects and seeing them everywhere and getting so excited, then the winter came and I was so sad.
I can imagine you're like, "Wait, where did all the insects go?"
Also because I come from a country where we don't have snow, we don't have
Oh.
winter like this, and there's always insects around. Even if they're not as many, there are. So I guess just I don't know, like winter has this really specific like silence. And I was nostalgic, so I
That
made a comic.
that is amazing. I love that so much. I mean, I can relate because here in Louisiana, well, we don't get snow either. I mean,
Mhm.
certainly, well, we kind of enjoy when it gets a little colder, there's a cold snap, at least it brings down the mosquitoes, right? But
Mhm.
I get super excited, like, I've, in the past few years, tried to plant more, like, native species, native flowers, and that kind of thing in my garden. So like just yesterday I saw like a giant swallowtail butterfly. Like I get really
That's
excited this
so
time of
cool.
year when the insects start coming out and coming back. And I can see the reward of like planting, doing some of the native planting, because I definitely will see insects that I don't normally see by
Oh
doing
my
that.
god. Yeah, that's so cool. It's so exciting always to see them. Like yesterday I was on a hike and I was like, ah, so happy.
No, okay, so like I think it was last summer. I had planted some milkweed and I noticed monarch caterpillars
Oh, nice.
for the first time, I guess in my adult life, like seeing them and being like, these are on the plant that I planted.
Oh my
I was
god.
so excited because I only had like one milkweed plant and they, like, ate it. I mean, a couple of them ate it, like, to nothing. And I was, like, worried. I was like, "They're not gonna have enough food." So I, like,
Ah!
ran to the plant store, and I was like, "I'm looking for milkweed," but I wanted, like, the native milkweed. So I, like, ran up to, like, a guy, that was in the plant store, and I was like, "I need milkweed, like, now." And he was
It's an
like
emergency.
he was like, "First of all, calm down." Like, this is what he said to me. He's like, "Second of all," like, and he was showing me where they were, but he was like, "This lady needs to calm down about her monarch caterpillars." But I mean, I was worried about them. I was like, "They're gonna starve. They don't have any more food."
No. I love that. Like how like planting something became like this, I don't know, like food source. Yeah. I think that's so nice.
It
But yeah,
actually
I would be
became
the same.
it
I
actually
feel like.
became this, like, sad story because I was watching them, and then I realized we had some wasps nearby that were, like, eating them. So there was, like, a
Oh,
couple that they didn't make it because they were being eaten by the wa and I was, like,
oh
watching
no.
enough, like, I was noticing they were dying, and I was like, "What?" Like, I saw one, like, cut in half, and at first I thought my dog got after the plant and the caterpillars. I was like, "He's been eating my caterpillars, like, what's happening?" And then I was watching enough that I saw a wasp, like, come in and, like,
Oof.
grab one of them, and I was, like, in that moment, like, so mad. I was like, how do I fix this? Like, I need to get the wasp away and protect my caterpillars." And eventually, I
Yeah.
just had to be like, "It's nature," I guess that's why, like, many monarch caterpillars, like, the bulk of them don't make it to adulthood because of, like, yeah, all these
Yeah.
things, like, they're pretty, like, fat and slow and just, like, watching that process and then
Mhm.
realizing, like, well, I kinda just have to be an observer because what else am I gonna do?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it happens. But I think it's really fascinating to see that interaction as well. I feel like we don't look closely enough sometimes to be able to see those things happen. I feel like it's fascinating. Like I when I was doing this whole like collaboration with the lab and everything, I was also taking an insect class because in in my school like I was able to, I don't know, they also give science classes. It's
Oh,
an art
cool.
school, but it's really interesting.
That's
But
amazing.
I took this insect morphology class and I learned about wasps and parasitic wasps and I
Right.
was like, wow, this like I don't think I've ever like would see this like in my life if I didn't learn about this before. Like I how could I notice? Like it's hard to stop and like actually see. Like it's like documentaries are the best.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, I so agree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
funny.
that's
There's parasitoid wasps here that
mhm.
infect cockroaches, which I mean, in Louisiana
Oh.
we have these giant, giant
Yeah.
cockroaches. And so you'll kind of know, like before you would see the cockroaches, because you usually would see them at night, I would noticed upstairs, in our house, like some of these wasps. And I was like, these tiny little, they don't look like wasps. They just look like these little weird little insects
Yeah.
and I was like, "What are these things?" And then I looked them up. I think I was like Google image, took a picture, was searching Google, which that's, I mean, talk about good and bad uses of AI. I guess that's a wonderful one of being like, take a picture and it shows you what it is.
I
And it was like,
know.
"Oh yeah, this is a parasitoid wasp that usually infects cockroaches, which means you probably have cockroaches in your house." And I was like, "Great."
Like oops.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. I've been having a lot of, I don't know, like even like thoughts about the kind of insects we like share space with usually, like a cockroach is in a city, like, or I don't know. I'm always so fascinated about that. Um this is actually related to that because um this is a comic I did about the fear I used to have with insects and like this kind of rejection I would feel towards them. And I don't know, I feel like cockroaches or, like insects, especially cockroaches or flies, I think they're insects we tend to be like, oof, it's hard to like, I don't know, think about them. But yeah, I was thinking about that like kind of um tingling feeling that you get when you talk about insects or something like
Yes,
that
you're like,
when you don't know.
oof.
Yeah. And I was just thinking about that. Like, I'm gonna read this really quick, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
So it says, I never liked insects. They appeared in my dreams every time I was going through an anxiety episode and thinking about them creating a crawling sensation in my skin. When I heard a buzzing, my body contracted and I felt relieved in the cold weather as it made insects invisible. Their unfamiliar aspects makes them unpredictable, and their size, although easy to ignore, expands our imagination, triggering our worst nightmares. We imagine them bigger, we imagine them everywhere. They are a reminder of the unknown around us, of all the things we don't control. Their presence then becomes uncomfortable, inconvenient. So it's like this kind of reflection of that feeling and like how, I don't know, I think we have a really complex relationship to them. And I feel like it's because of that. We like know them, but like they're all around, but we don't know them, and that's why we're so scared. I am not scared of them anymore because I learned about them, I guess. And
That
yeah.
that is so beautiful. I love that. And you're so right. Like, yeah, even like descriptions we use when we're saying like, "Oh, my skin is crawling," or yeah, thinking about like anxiety is just like, yeah, it's so funny that that's probably, I'm sure, like a learned thing where it probably has a long history of like us associating insects with these things, you know. I kind of
Yeah.
wonder when that started, you know? Is that always
Mm.
been always, or was there a point, is there some civilization somewhere that, like, reveres insects and does not think of them with fear?
Yeah, that's so interesting. I wonder that too because I don't know. I feel like even after this process of like having this sketchbook and everything where I was drawing insects constantly, when I heard a buzzing lately, I get like excited and I start looking for who is buzzing. And before it was like the opposite reaction. It was like try to
Right, like,
protect
"Ah," yeah,
myself.
right.
Um, and it's just interesting. I feel like to some extent it is learned, and to some extent it can also be like just a normal reaction.
Right.
But yeah, I'm super curious about that too. These were some of the covers I was doing for the books. This one didn't make it, so
Oh,
this is
he's so cute.
the only one that exists of him. But yeah, this is a flesh fly. I made a letter to like decomposer insects, like a cockroach and a flesh fly. This was another background I did. All the other covers. Um,
Oh,
yeah.
I love the beetle. I love how you're, I don't know, match the color. Yeah, just, like, picking colors that make it contrast so much. You have such a, like, very textured, is it how do you draw these things? Is it just pencil? Yeah.
I usually like doing sketches in pencil, but then I use um acrylic ink and color pencils. So the acrylic ink is like used
Mm.
in this kind of places where you can see like even the brush strokes a little bit, but then I add stuff with color pencil. I feel like I'm still like, because I used to do like all color pencil drawings, and I started having problems in my arm because of this
Oh.
movement. Uh so I feel like trying to find other ways, and I feel like it gives more. even variety to one image to have different textures living in the same space. It's like, I guess, more interesting and more dynamic. So I'm like trying to figure that out a little more. I feel like with these comics, I've been doing stuff I feel really happy with.
Yeah,
This comic is one of them.
I love it. I love the shadows on those other ants too.
Oh, this one's.
Yeah, but I love that, like the ants. Oh, it's so. I love that.
Thank
Kind of
you.
reminds you of like summer. Like the such stark light that's you know makes you see the shadows like really close up.
Yeah, I really enjoy making the shadow. There's alongside with the books, I did this like 9 feet painting. It's like a big, big painting. And it's like a person laying down and like a lot of ants walking on their body. And for each ant, I did like their shadow because I was like so particular
Oh my
about,
goodness.
yeah, about the light because I don't know. I don't know if this sounds like cheesy, but I feel like their shadow is also like, I don't know, like a more specific trait of like they're there, they're existing, so
Yeah,
they have a shadow. And like the fact that each one had a shadow was important for me while I was painting.
yeah, absolutely.
This one was thinking about scale and about how, I don't know, I guess when we think about insects, scale becomes, I don't know, like an interesting thing to think about, like how they perceive everything being so small. And I was thinking about how a hand can become a landscape, or like how things just feel so different. Like a flower can become like what to us would be a tree, or a rock can be a whole mountain, or something like that. So I was like trying to maybe imagine a little bit how that would be for them.
You know what's so funny? I just thought in my head, and this probably reveals like me being older because I feel like younger people haven't seen this, but like the Honey I Shrunk the Kids, like the original movie. It's like the
Mm,
first time I thought about that, like because he like gets as small as the like ant, and then we very much like the ant, the insects are scary because they're always like running away from the insects, but it's like they
yeah,
were seeing like shrunk down, so it's like the blades of grass are like a jungle and like, I think or, like, the first, like, Bug's Life that I saw, like, there was very specific maybe films or representations as a kid where I saw that, like, representations of that scale from the perspective of an insect. There was always very fascinating.
it is super fascinating. I really like actually the locking screen. Oh, my phone is in here, but the locking screen, like the screen of my phone, the locked when it's locked, it's like a picture taking on the perspective of like under flowers, so their flowers
That's
look super
adorable. So
tall.
you're like the insect.
Yeah, I want to be this small.
Yes.
But yeah, I always love those like movies as well, or media that show like the world, because I feel like that's the thing, like things that are so familiar become so new. And I think that's something so fascinating about playing with scale. Like yeah, like something that you would see and you could know, and you could maybe, I don't know, take for granted in some
Right.
way. Like if you were so small, like things would look so, so different. And it's just amazing to feel
Yeah.
like wonder again about those things.
Maybe related to that, like, to kinda go on the dark side of, like, is there anything in particular that's, like, a struggle for you at the moment and or with this project or science and art in general? Or yeah, that you or something that you've gone through that's maybe a struggle or, thinking about I know the current landscape for science and science research and public understanding of science is maybe yeah, I don't know. I mean, some people might find hope, some people might find frustrations of the current moment, but kind of what's your take?
Oof. Well, I actually want to show you the books because there's actually one book that I want to talk about. Okay, so these are the books that came out. So all the drawings that I was showing you take like their final form is like books.
Oh, that's adorable.
And they're all different formats, so they can be all opened differently. For example, this one is the ant, and it's like all about scale. So it has this little.
That's adorable. Wait,
I don't know how to do this. Okay,
how
yeah.
did you fabricate this, or like how did you design it to where you knew it was gonna like pop out like that?
Um,
That's
there's a
amazing.
lot of different like formats that already exist. Like I didn't
Mm,
invent any of these formats.
gotcha.
But yeah, I guess it's like trying to see what format fits whatever you want to do. And I found this format actually like in a TikTok video. It was like so random and I was like, I need to do that. That's so fun. And I feel like yeah, I don't know. I think it makes sense with what I wanted to say about scale and maybe trying to focus in one reality of the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah, and
And
almost like you're looking into a microscope or something, like
yeah, and
into a
then the sides are like the grass.
that is so cute.
So it's like this little, I don't know, device. I'm really into like devices like microscopes or
Right.
telescopes. I think it's just super interesting to play around with like the lens and the perspective.
So,
Um,
okay, are these books a single are they just for you, or have you sold the like, are you gonna sell them? Because
I
I think kids need these books.
I would love to. I would love to. I did a couple of copies of every book because I was like doing so many things, but I've been thinking a lot about maybe how to exhibit them. This is something I would be really interested in, like maybe collaborating with labs or with like museums or different spaces to like exhibit books or like make interactive exhibitions that can invite people to have more questions about them. I've been thinking about selling these books. Yeah, like I think there's a lot of possibilities um in this, but um I wanted to show you this book because it's about decomposer insects.
Oh. I
And
should connect you with there's a researcher at LSU that I told a story about in for Halloween. We featured her and
that's
the
so
media
cool.
picked it up, but she's doing research with decomposing flies, particularly as
Oh,
like forensic analysis. So she's doing
oh, interesting.
things where she can through mass spectrometry, which is like an analysis technique to be able to like find molecular signatures of individual insects. She can tell like pull an insect off of a decomposing corpse, or they were working with animal corpses to pull one, and even if it like is just an egg of that insect or a larvae, they can use chemistry to detect what type it is and then track backwards through time based on knowing that species of insect, how long is its life cycle, how long has it been on that corpse, or what stage it's in. So they can basically
Whoa,
timeline like, okay, this animal died 2 weeks ago, or even maybe what it died of because insect has been eating on the corpse. Like, it's fascinating. But I should
that's
connect you with this
crazy.
researcher because that you would love them and they would love this
Yeah,
book. Like, just getting really curious about the flies and also their like chemical signatures.
this is so amazing.
I know.
Wow. I'm that's something I am so like surprised and like fascinated about, and it's like how yeah, like they can indicate so many things. And I don't know, I think it's great. It's super interesting what you're telling me. And yeah, I would love to meet them.
Yes.
That's awesome. So basically this is a letter I did for Decomposer insects. I had a not great experience with flesh flies. I don't know. I don't know if you want to hear about this.
I
It's not
do.
great, but
I absolutely do.
um so basically there was a moment where in my house we realized we had mice, rats in the house, in the building, and the um like the owner of the house ended up calling an exterminator. And I left my house for a couple of days, and then when I came back, my room, like I think the mice were living like on top of, like in the vent or something on top of my room, and it smelled horrible.
Oh no.
And there was flies coming out of the vent, and I panicked. And I obviously like did all I could to like solve the issue and everything, but I feel like I don't know, like being months thinking about insects and then this happening, I was like, oh my god, this is crazy. But I started having a lot of, I don't know, reflecting a lot on it, and I started also Googling a lot of it about it. And I was just trying to understand maybe what their role was in the decomposition. And like, I was like, okay, they're, like if it's smelling bad, it's because they're making the process faster. And like, they're just doing this. And
Yeah, it's like, go, go, go.
I was doing my best to not, just like be straight up disgusted.
Okay, so literally, don't feel bad. I've had the same exact experience. So here in Louisiana, we live close to water. We
Yeah.
have rats, and pretty much, I don't know what people know about rats, and it sounds disgusting. When we first moved here, I was appalled, but now I've just had to accept it. The rats are insanely smart. So if they smell like that there's been rats here before, you basically can't get rid of them. If they want to come in, they're going to come
Yeah.
in. But we've definitely had a rat die in here before. And actually, I didn't smell it. I just saw flies first. And
Oh,
I was just like, what are these flies doing? And then you realize, oh, there's a dead rat up there. I was like, oh, at least the flies let us know.
yeah. They're just like, hey, there's
They're
a
just like,
rat
hey, you
here.
got a problem up there.
Oh my
But
god.
this researcher was like telling me like how much fly. I mean, they can detect a decomposing, body. Like they'll be the first like on the scene, like from like a long ways away. I wish I remembered the stats, but I mean,
Hmm.
they can detect it from a long ways away. Like they're there within like minutes once something dies,
Wow. That's
which is
super
crazy.
impressive. I
No.
feel like, yeah, that's the thing. I feel like they have a really different way of working. And I feel like, I don't know, I was also, I felt really, I don't know, I started being a little philosophical about it because I was like, okay, but what do death mean to them? Like, because it's like what they're drawn to. And I was just like trying to see maybe what meaning I was putting to death and, what meaning could they have in their minds of it. And I don't know. I feel like it's really interesting to see how like fast or like how that is a source of like life for them, like for them a dead body is like, oh, I'm gonna lay my eggs here. Like
Yeah.
this is the perfect way. But and it's
Looks
interesting.
It really is. Okay, so yeah, now I want to see the book.
Okay, so basically this was like reflecting on the actually this is the dead rat.
Oh my gosh. I
This
love
is
it. I
like
love how
the
you turn this
skeleton.
into art. I love it.
And then this is me crying about. But yeah, this is like the comic I did.
That is adorable.
And I was just like trying to, I don't know, like what I wrote for cockroaches and the flesh fly was like kind of like that death was really scary, but like death was already there and they just made death invisible. And basically at the end, I was like trying to say, like, you are making me see like life in death because, like trying to understand it more as a cycle. Because I feel like when we think of death, we think of this like linear thing and it's like the end and there's
Mm.
nothing beyond it, but there's so much moving in it. So many organisms like, being alive when someone dies. So I was just like trying to, I don't know, maybe see it in that way and like try to find that value in something that we tend to reject so much and be so scared of. And this chapter, because in my thesis book, each chapter is like matching each one of these little pieces. And when I'm talking about the decomposer insects, I talk about death and environment's death and maybe how we can find some kind of, I don't know, like new meaning into this so we can like, I don't know, try to reframe this like hopelessness that I feel like we can easily feel because of the state of the world. And it was kind of maybe how, as an artist, I can see myself as a decomposer and try to build from what's going on and like try to transform. um yeah, like make a change through what I can do. um and yeah, maybe turn that hopelessness into like something that I can work with and that I can like do for the planet to like regenerate. So that was like kind of like a statement I was making in the thesis, because I do think, I don't know, I feel like sometimes even like when I graduated high school or college, that I knew that I wanted to make art. I feel like there's this thing of like, okay, I'm good at making art, but like I feel like when it comes to like surviving, making money,
Mm.
like being in like adult life, I feel like it's hard sometimes to find hope as an artist. But I feel like just being able to find also the purpose of what you want to do with your art is like something that becomes in itself like a an engine for you to like keep moving and keep doing things. And I don't know, I feel like to me this is like the motivation I find in like trying to do something for my surroundings through what I do, even if it's that, like, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of people that could say that art is not, I don't know, like fulfilling like a practical I don't know, function. But I feel like just being able to welcome people to feel wonder and feel more like they love their surroundings a little more, I think that can encourage care. And I don't know, just for them to like, yeah, like care and take care of their surroundings.
Abs-
Yeah, that's
yeah,
kind of what I think.
that's amazing, and I so agree. It is honestly, there's a little bit of tragicness to this idea that like artists have to grapple with this because in my mind, I mean, this is like, I mean, just you showing me this books is like the best thing that's happened to me all week.
No,
Like I love it, and
thank
I think
you.
that it. I mean, think how important it is to, I mean, just so much of like what we decide to do. I mean, I know that there were like children's books. I mean, I still remember to this day, like that were like formative in my like growing up, and like some of the first images I remember, like
Yeah.
books were very, very important to me as a kid. I think I like, you know, everybody has, difficult things, but childhood wasn't particularly always
Yeah.
happy, right? So, like, diving
Yeah.
into books, and I very much found my inspiration for, like, science and loving science through, like, science fiction and these books, and,
Mhm.
like, it really is so formative. So, I mean, just the idea that, like, some kid could see one of these books and decide, like, "I'm gonna become," study insects as a result of that. Like, it can be
Yeah.
actually way more powerful than, like, what than most than most of our efforts as science communicators. So I think, like,
Mm.
the value and the power of some of these things is really, yeah, you can't even compare to sort of like mass communication, right? So
I I think it's, I yeah, I see it like as something really important. I feel like art and design are things that like they define a lot of how we perceive the world and we don't even notice sometimes. Like, I don't know, just as we were talking about, like in really slight decisions that you make to represent something, you can, I don't know, like change the perception of someone about something, or you can like reinforce a speech that maybe, like you like, I feel like as an illustrator, you kind of have a certain responsibility towards the decisions you make, because those things matter a lot, even if, yeah, like maybe someone that is not related to art a lot or something could maybe not see those things, but it's super important. As you're saying, children's books, and it's interesting because I specialize in children's literature before coming here to the US. And it's interesting to see how political and like how like, I don't know, important children's books are in
oh,
order
for
to
sure.
like shape perception and the way you tell stories, and like tell stories about yourself, tell stories about the people around you. Like, I think stories are so important for us to like understand and like live life in a certain way. Like, I feel like they define a lot on how we move around the world.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I know we've, gone over the hour, but
Oh my god,
I
sorry.
but, like, I love this so much and just love seeing all the beautiful pictures that you've been showing us. Um,
Thank you so
yeah,
much for
so
having me.
yeah, thank you so much. Do you have, like, hopes in terms of, like, next steps for yourself? And do you think that you might be able to, like, work with scientists to, I don't know, as part of, like, scientific grants to do kinda outreach or, like yeah, I don't know, do you have, like, a call to action for people if they wanna work with you? Is that something that you're
Oh my
doing or
god. I would love that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I feel like just being able to like do collaboration with scientists has been such a nice experience, and I feel like one of my dreams now it's like to be able to go on a field trip and like help register some kind of research. Yeah, I am totally open to work with people and like I would love to collaborate with labs. I would love to collaborate with like I don't know, stuff related to environmental education,
Mhm.
with museums, I'm also interested. I really wanna keep, um, making things to invite learning about, like, animals and insects if possible, but also plants. It's, like, so fun. So, yeah, I'm super open, and I would love to keep collaborating with people, yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much, and if you're ever selling your books, definitely send me the link 'cause
Yeah.
I want to purchase.
I will. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I am really happy that we had this conversation. I feel like I did this and I wanted to really share it somewhere. So I really am grateful for this space.